Good morning, scholars. Today we are going to be putting it all together. This week we've been looking at a couple different things. First thing we looked at is how do you find C on the piano? By identifying two black keys, coming down and sliding one to the left. After that we looked at how do I build a scale using my formula whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And the way that that formula can allow me to build a scale anywhere on the piano. We looked at intervals and the relationship of intervals in a C major scale. So we learned about the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the eighth. And we learned that in a major scale, all of those intervals are either going to be major or perfect, with our perfect intervals being the unison, the fourth, the fifth, and the octave, all characterized by that hollow sound. After that, we looked at chords. How do you build a chord? By stacking intervals. And we looked at inversions. How do I take the note of the bottom note of my chord, move it up by an octave, and create an inversion of the same chord? In this case, I'm looking at C major first inversion. If I take that E, move it up, C major second inversion, and then I get up to root position one octave higher, bring it back down, root position. Today we're going to be looking at Kokoleoko and the way in which that song uses all that we have learned. So here's the melody to Kokoleoko. Typically when you're playing piano, the melody, the part that most people are singing, is played in the right hand. And the harmony, the chords and such, is played in the left hand. So for Kokoleoko in C major, you want to start with a C major chord in your left hand. So I make sure I have a C, an E, and a G. I'm going to play my melody up here one octave higher to help you hear the difference. That's the beginning of my song. Kokoleoko mama. Now, the next part of my song. You might notice that F, we're staying on it for quite some time. F is not part of the C chord, so I have to think of a different chord that I might be able to use. Since I'm hitting F, let's try F major chord. I now move up a fourth to the F major chord. Excellent. That seems like it works, but that E is now not really working. I try to come back. I know I have an E in my C major chord as well. If I put that together, when I get to crowin' for day, I have crowin' for day stuck on this D. Well, what chord of the three chords that we've looked at has a D? The only chord that has a D here is G. So I move up to my G major, and that skip down to a B is going to allow us to stay within the G chord. But now, it feels a little uncomfortable in my song if I stay on that B. Like it wants to move back to C. Once I do that, I also want to move my chord back to C. So my first part of the song ends up sounding like this. Ah, bye. this way I can play the whole song just using those 3 chords and keeping my melody in my right hand. Here we go, the whole song together. Now, you may have noticed as I'm moving my left hand, there is a lot of jumping around that I have to do to get from C to F, back down to C, up to G, back down to C. As we mentioned in our last video, the best way to solve this movement problem is by using inversions. So I can keep my hand relatively in the same place by just moving a few notes and keeping what is known as the common tone. So here, if I'm going, I know I need to move to F, and I have a C here. So the easiest way for me to move to F would be to keep as many notes as possible that I'm already playing. In F, I've got an F, an A, and a C. In C, a C, an E, and a G. So the tone or the note that is being shared is a C in both C major and F major. Instead of moving my whole hand up to F, I can now keep that common tone in my pinky and just move up to F and A. This way, I'm still keeping that chord, F major, but I'm allowing my hand to stay in the same position and have to move a lot less. To return to C, I just move that F and A back down to E and G, and I've got my C major chord once again. It looks like this. To move to the G, I do the same thing. My common tone here, C, E, G, G, B, D. My common tone between the C major chord and the G major chord is that G. But since my thumb is already there, I can't really cross over like this. That doesn't make a lot of sense for my hand. Instead, I can move down. My C moves down to the B, and my E moves down to the D, and my thumb stays on that G. So now I have a first inversion G chord. And I'm able to keep that G chord without having to move my hand very much. In fact, here's F, here's G, C to F, F to C, C to G, G to C. If I kept everything in root position, I would have to move around like this. Still the right chords, it would still work with my melody, but it's a lot more movement and a lot harder to do. So, one more time putting the song together. Happy music making!